QFM 96 presents Don Felder this Thursday at KEMBA Live. Tickets on sale now at access.com. And on the QFM 96 hotline right now, the man himself, Don Felder. Hey, Don.
Hey, Archie. How you doing there in Ohio?
We're all good, man. Looking forward to Thursday. And it's so cool to finally get a chance to talk to you. I've got all these questions in my head, man. I know as soon as we hang up, I'm going to be like, oh, crap, I forgot to ask about all of you, and my friends will give me grief about that or something, but I'm going to try and squeeze it all in here, my man.
All right, you got it. Let's get going.
So let's start in Gainesville, Florida, and your beginnings. I mean, your love of music, playing guitar. How did it all start for you, Don?
Well, I had just come back from North Carolina, and my favorite uncle had given me a box of cherry bombs that we had hidden from my dad in the trunk of the car because he wouldn't let us kids. I guess I was about 9 or 10. And my brother was about 15. And so we jumped out of the car when we got home and went back to help Dad unload the trunk. And my brother took those cherry bombs and ran into the house with them and hit them. So when it rained in Florida, we used to have a ditch on both sides of the road and a big metal culvert when you could drive over the culvert to get onto your driveway. So when it rained, those two ditches would just flood with rainwater.
Nice.
We would run out, light some of those cherry bombs, and throw them upstream and run back into the house and wait for them to float down into that big old metal culvert and explode. Boom, boom! People would come running out of the front of their house, wondering what's going on. And there was a young guy across the street that had been watching us do that and came over and said, I want some of those cherry bombs. I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a handful of these cherry bombs for that guitar you've got in the top of your closet. And he went, great, I'll be right back. He ran back over, came back over, gave me the guitar. I gave him the cherry bombs. About 15 minutes later, all the cherry bombs that he had were gone, but I had a guitar.
and you gotta love a cool uncle story, because he was the cool uncle if he had the cherry bombs, right?
That's right. And he used to have a little 22 rifle with a sight on it, and we would go out and shoot mistletoe out of the oak trees so we could put them in packages with a little ribbon and sell them for 25 cents a piece.
We're talking to Don Felder. Who were some of your influences on guitar growing up, Don?
Well, in the South, you could only listen to like WLAC in Nashville, Tennessee, and hear B.B. King and Albert King and Little Richard, and all those amazing guitarists and people that played music. Like you'd hear Pat Boone on the radio in Gainesville during the day, but at night you could hear Little Richard doing that sort of stuff at night, and there was a world of difference. So I would say it was B.B. King, Albert King. I started learning Chet Atkins stuff early on, a lot of the Elvis Presley songs and all the guitar parts that were going on with that. Finally, I got into studying and learning jazz and studied and played jazz in a little jazz fusion band down there. But yeah, just anything I could get my hands on, I would learn how to play. I was completely self-taught, and we didn't have any money for music lessons. There was no music school in Gainesville at the time, and there wasn't even a music store there for years. So if you want to learn to play something, you figured out how to do it.
Man, and I've always been fascinated with bands who have guitar duos, and I think one of the reasons that you and Joe Walsh were so special, in my opinion, 3 different signature sounds. So like when Don Felder has a guitar in his hand, you know who it is. And same with Joe. And the coolest part is you two together have a signature sound. You know it's Don and Joe. That's rare air, man, especially for 2 guitarists.
Yeah, Joe and I had a really graceful, elegant way of playing together, where we had such respect for each other and how we each played that we were gracious enough to let Joe step up and play. I'd play a supplemental or supporting roll, lower, down, or a chord progression or something. And then Joe would step back and make room for me to play. And I would go up high and he would come down and start playing low. It was nothing we ever discussed. It was just a kind of an understanding of and graciousness to be able to make room for the other player, and that's why it works so well.
Yeah, and it makes sense that a Florida and an Ohio boy would, you guys would work out together, man.
Yeah, I love Joe to death. Great guy, great guitar player, and really a ton of laughs.
And how do you talk to Don Felder and not discuss Hotel California? And Don, so many iconic moments in those 6.5 minutes. I mean, what are you most proud of when it comes to the song? And I mean, do you have a favorite moment or part within it?
I think one of the most interesting things is that I made a whole demo of that song. Started out playing the acoustic 12-string part, wrote a bass part, and the electric guitar parts, and the descending harmony lines, the reggae parts, all the stuff that's pretty much on that record that was redone was based on that cassette that I played. When we got in the studio finally down in Miami that Joe and I were going to do the guitar trade-offs on the end, we all set up and we're sitting there playing, and Henley comes in the control room and says, "What are you guys doing?" "Well, we're recording and making up the solos." No. You got to make it just like the demo. I said, "I don't know where that demo was. That was a year ago. It was just an idea I made up." So I had to pick up a phone, call my house back in Malibu, have my housekeeper go over into my studio, get my cassette, bring it back over with the blaster, put it in the blaster, put it on play, and put the microphone up in front of it so we could record it in Miami so I could remember what I just made up, because Henley had been listening to it over and over and over and over for a year, and it had to be just like the demo. So
wow.
Thank God that cassette was still around.
Tell us about your band and what we can expect Thursday evening at KEMBA Live, Don.
I have some amazing players. These guys are not just your typical backup musicians. They are the absolute creme de la creme of musicians and singers. My bass player is a guy named Mark Childers. He's worked with Joan Jett, toured and recorded with Steven Tyler from Aerosmith, worked with Alan Jackson, and he's bass player and musical director for Carrie Underwood. My drummer has played with just about more people than I have, to tell you the truth. But I'll tell you some of his credentials. He's played with a band called Rascal Flatts. He played with one of our old opening acts in the Eagles named Sheryl Crow. He's played with Little Big Town, toured with Brad Paisley, and he played drums as a road drummer for Keith Urban for 6 years. He is now also, when he's not working with me, he's Carrie Underwood's drummer.
Wow. Well, if he's played with Brad Paisley and Don Felder, that's a pretty good resume to have guitarists you've played with.
Yeah, and Keith Urban, too. And then my guitar player, all of these guys are great players, great credit. My guitar player is a guy named David Myers. He's played with Kid Rock, Kenny Chesney, Tanya Tucker, on and on and on. So all of these guys are top-notch, just unbelievably great. And I wouldn't have anything less than that. To walk out on stage and play Eagles song, the vocals have to be impeccable. The quality of the musicianship has to be impeccable. So they breathe such fun and interesting energy into these songs that it makes me inspired to play these songs that I've been playing for 50 years.
And
but by the end of the show, when we do Long Run, Take It Easy, Heartache Tonight, Life in the Fast Lane, and Hotel California, people are up on their feet dancing and rocking. They got their iPhones out. They're taking videos of everything. We're just having a great time at a really fun party.
Cannot wait. Hey, last question, Don, and it involves a song that I love to play on the radio. It's a fan favorite. It's been in my rotation since junior high, and that's Heavy Metal, Taking a Ride, the theme song to the early 80s animated film Heavy Metal, which can you tell us about that song? I mean, the movie is a cult classic for Gen Xers like myself, and the soundtrack as well. I mean, if your answer involves the B-side, all of you, I'm not gonna get upset either. But
well, I got a call from Irving Azoff to go over and screen this movie to see if I'd write a song for it. And I'd done a bunch of other movie songs and stuff, so I drove over to, I don't know if it was Warner Brothers or Universal, wherever, and sat down with this director and watched this movie, and it was like nothing I had ever seen before in my life. It was like an animated adult stoner movie. And I went, well, it's either going to be a huge hit with all the stoners or it's going to be a giant flop. But I'll go home and write a track for it. So as a matter of fact, the basic track idea I had written for the long run for a harder rock and roll song that Joe and I could play on to follow up Hotel California. We cut the basic track for it, but we never got around to finishing the lyrics, and we just had a tour started at a certain date, and we just ran out of time to finish. So I thought, well, if the Eagles aren't going to use this, I'll make it into a song for this movie. So I went in and recorded it, and had a great time doing it. A lot of fun. Matter of fact, Quincy Jones was in the studio right next door to me. So when I was taking a break, I go over and see Quincy. He and I were on the same label together back in 1969. My first album was on a jazz fusion rock band called Flow. So I go hang out with Quincy.
Man, and I got to tell you, with the heavy metal, the soundtrack, and the vinyl, the album itself, you were right on. And my college roommates, we can all vouch, you were dead on when you came to the attraction to stoners. So, QFM 96 presents Don Felder Thursday at KEMBA Live. Tickets available at access.com. Don, thanks so much for your time. An absolute honor to talk to you, my man.
Oh, well, I hope you come back to the show Thursday night and come backstage and say hello. It'd be nice to thank you for taking the time.